Hello, I'm Thomas Gray, and this is July 4th, 2020, and I'm going to make a presentation about culture for success. And I wanted to mention at first that a lot of people have different ideas about success, and I just simply define success as being able to do what you want to do. If you try to make some kind of technology and it turns out it's bad for the environment or bad for your life, then that's not success, right? But even people who say they're not for success, they're thinking of something that they don't like about the thing, and that isn't really success in the first place. Or if people say, I don't like technology. Well, maybe you don't like combustion engine technology using fossil fuels or some other kind of problems, the chemical contamination or something. Well, for you, that's not success. But even people who say they don't like technology, I think when you examine it carefully, there are things that we are able to do that we're very glad we're able to do. Where most people would like to be able to refrigerate their food. Most people appreciate being able to travel across the world in a day instead of spending a number of weeks in a boat. And so I wanted to just clarify that when we're talking about what culture gives success, we're talking about success that we want. And this is the big question that people have is, what enabled people to do this? How did we have this success? And it seems to be only in certain countries that it happened, and at a certain time. And especially for those who live in areas where maybe they haven't been able to get the success, they're wondering, why can't I do this? Why can't we do this? Well, there's a culture that we need to have to cause us to have success. And I picked a few pictures of technology because we're going to focus on the ability to successfully make technology. What gave that ability? I have a picture of the Eiffel Tower here. A man, apparently an architect, looking at a building, doing some planning, or maybe an engineer, computer, and the space program, being able to go out into space. Okay, and I want to say the success is really based on a certain culture. And we're going to find out what it is because it really makes a difference. So we want to just think about this at the beginning and just think about what is it that makes this and this and this happen. And I want to focus on culture being beliefs, attitudes, and work habits, or just life habits if you want to talk about it in that term. And people often think of success as more like a result of education, a result of having technology available, and something that you buy in a bookstore or sign up for a course. And I'm talking about attitudes and work habits. What does that have to do with that? Well, beliefs form attitudes, and attitudes form work habits. And I'm going to show you that this is really the reason why certain people, certain countries, at certain times were able to successfully develop the technology they wanted to do. And that if you want to develop this technology, if you want to do what you want to do and not be trapped in frustration, you need to have these beliefs, attitudes, and work habits. In short, you need to have this culture. And I made a little illustration here so we can think about it in these terms. Your attitudes produce your work habits. They pull the work habits, and then the work habits produce the technology. What were they? I'm going to show you what they are, just directly, instead of proving them to you. I think when you look at them, you will recognize that they really do make sense. And these kind of attitudes and work habits are really necessary. It's not just me. This is being used. I even talked to a man from the U.S. military who teaches similar culture aspects for his soldiers. It's used in many different areas, and you'll see that. So it makes sense. Other people have already seen that it makes sense, and I think you will too. And then I'm going to go through history and show you that the areas and the times in which technology advanced were characterized by these. And I think that proves very soundly that this kind of culture, these kind of attitudes and work habits were really necessary. Okay, the first one I want to show to you, that for success in technology, because we are going to be talking about technology, and I hope that you understand that does mean doing the things we want to do to be able to accomplish the goals we need. We need to learn and prepare with enthusiasm. Education doesn't really do any good unless the students have a certain enthusiasm to say, let's do this and get some things ready, prepare to do this. And why would a person want to do this? Well, they have to have a certain belief that gives them this, okay? But we need to have this in the school. And if you have this attitude of learning and preparing, the work habit of learning and preparing with enthusiasm, it doesn't really, a bad education system isn't going to hold you back. You look back in the history, and many of the great scientific advances were made in the absence of a really strong education system. Isaac Newton made his developments when he was sent home for quarantine because of the Black Plague. And so he went home and figured out the laws of motion, the laws of gravity. So this is really the key. And to learn and prepare with enthusiasm, you have to have a kind of an attitude of optimistic expectancy. And that, because if you don't have that optimistic expectancy, you're not going to learn and prepare with enthusiasm. Now I want to give you a couple examples here from famous scientists. This is Alexander Graham Bell, the man who invented the telephone, one of the people who invented it. He lived in the 1800s mainly and died in 1922. He says, sometimes we stare so long at a door that is closing that we see too late the one that is open. Another man, Henry Ford, famous founder of the Ford Motor Company, he made these statements: whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And then I like this one even better. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. Okay, so he experienced failure. His first car was a piece of junk, let's say. But he said, I want to keep making this better and to keep improving. And he had this idea that he could do this. If he didn't have this, he never would have prepared to improve his car with enthusiasm. He would just half-heartedly tried a couple things. When it didn't work, he would have given up. That's why technology doesn't go ahead in many places and at many times. The next question is, how do you grow this optimistic expectancy that gives you the ability to work like this, to prepare with enthusiasm? Well, you need a belief. The universe is a structured system, and we can and should learn about that system. Okay? Henry Ford, Alexander Graham Bell, and all of the rest of the people who did development in technology and science had this belief. You have to have it. If you don't believe that the universe is structured, and not only that it has some kind of a structure, but that we are going to be able to learn that structure, and that we should do that, well, then you're not going to be optimistic about any progress. And a specific example of this belief is regarding the computer industry, which I'm working in a company that deals with computers and computer programming right now. And here's another way to express this general rule in specific terms. There are rules that govern computer processes that we can learn and apply. If you didn't think there were any rules for doing computer, that you just sort of put in some statements and maybe it'll come out right and maybe next time it won't, you're going to really try to learn it very well. But if you know that there's a system you can learn, that you can use design methods, design tools, design patterns, and you say, if I learn those, I'll be able to make my computer do what I want. That's called success, right? Then you can do it. If not, you can't. Okay, now we're going to go to the second one. The next thing we need is to be working carefully. Work carefully and accept correction. Don't just think, if I do it, it has to be good. Okay? Now this is going to come from an attitude. And the attitude is called a careful, humble attitude. Okay? And you don't do your work carefully if you don't have this careful, humble attitude. If you think, it doesn't matter, whatever, or I did it, how can you tell me it's going to be wrong? I never make mistakes. Well, you're not going to make any progress. Look at some of the great scientists who had this. Albert Einstein. People talk about Albert Einstein like he was the greatest genius. I don't really think he was. He was a great scientist, but there were a lot of other great scientists too. He had a humble attitude. He said a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. Compare that to so many people who will say, I don't ever make mistakes. No, Albert Einstein said he made mistakes. He was a very humble man, at least in his beginning, and as he went through his career. I think he retained that. I remember hearing a couple stories about Albert Einstein where somebody was trying to explain something to him, and he said, please slow down. I don't think so fast. And the guy was shocked. Albert Einstein doesn't think fast? Another interesting story of Albert Einstein was that he lived in Princeton, New Jersey in his later life, and worked at Princeton University. He lived in Princeton, New Jersey, and this little girl was having trouble in school, and the teacher was frustrated, and she was so frustrated, she said, well, if you can't understand what I'm trying to teach you, I guess you'll just have to ask Albert Einstein to help you. And the girl took that seriously, and so on her way home, she knew where Albert Einstein lived. She walked up to his door and knocked on the door. He came to the door. He said, Mr. Einstein, my teacher says you need to help me with math. What do you think a great scientist with great prestige worldwide would do? Well, if they're really a great scientist, they're a humble person. And he said, come on in. He sat her down on the floor and explained her lesson, and then he signed her paper to say, tell the teacher you did what you asked. And then they now have this paper posted in Princeton University as a great souvenir of this man. But he was a humble, down-to-earth man. The Wright brothers had this idea. They said if we worked on the assumption that what is accepted as true really is true, then there would be little hope for advance. They were always ready to correct their mistakes. They made their first glider, and they said, we tried it according to all the accepted rules, the published data of Audio Lilienthal, and it doesn't work. Let's fix it. Let's figure it out. What's the matter? So they had a humble attitude. This is necessary. What is the belief that gives you a humble attitude? The belief that we should verify all ideas by testing them in the real world. And in the example of computer development, when we make computer programs, work carefully. We have to work carefully, test our product, and listen to criticism. If somebody says, I don't think this is the way to do it, we don't just say, who are you to tell me? We humbly say, what do you mean? What can I do better? Let's look at the third one. For success in technology, we need to accomplish as much as we can. It's not enough just to work carefully and accept criticism, but if it takes us all our life to do one simple problem, we're not going to make very much advancement. And so we need to have this work habit of just trying to use my time in the most efficient way to accomplish as much as I can. And I want to emphasize when I say accomplish as much as we can, we are not talking about working yourself to death. Japan and Korea are famous for that. There are people who have literally worked themselves to death. And that is not what we're talking about here. But you need an attitude of being willing to work hard. Willingness to work. Okay? It means you have to rest, you have to take vacations, you have to go home and relax, eat your food. And no smart business owner ever wants his employees to work too hard, because they start making mistakes, they get worn out, and he has a bunch of useless employees after a while. So a slave driver who tries to make his people work themselves until they're just falling over is not very smart. And so we're talking about, okay, you have 8 hours to work in your day. Do you spend that time working? And let's say, man, what can I do? Maybe some problem, you have a problem with your computer or something. You can say, well, what can I do now to make use of my time so I'm not wasting my time? That's what we're talking about, okay? And I just put one on here to illustrate this, willingness to work, and that's Thomas Edison. He made a famous statement, genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. But I think we don't need so many examples here because it's very well known how hard these developers have worked to get their product out. They just kept going and going and going. Whether you talk about the Wright brothers, Henry Ford, Isaac Newton, whoever, they were continually trying to advance. They weren't just waiting for someone to push them. Okay, this is the most important thing. If you think that the key to success in technology is to have a bunch of slave drivers pushing people or giving them a lot of motivation with a lot of money, that's not what did it, and that's not what will do it again. Okay, what belief do you need? You need to have the belief that there will be good results if we invest time and effort to understand and apply what we've learned. Right? You need to believe that there will be good efforts. That's why you're going to be willing to work. Think about that. Like I said, I think if you just think about this, you realize, yeah, these are the keys. These beliefs, these attitudes, and these work habits are the keys to doing things. Because if you don't believe that there will be good results, you're not sure. You think, maybe I'll spend a whole year working on this and it'll be a piece of junk and I'm not going to really do anything. You're not going to be working very hard. You're going to be looking for opportunities to spend more time in recreation, playing games, than you are to actually advance in your work. Okay? And the specific version of this, when we work, we actively try to maximize our efforts. Okay? You're not happy just to work to please the boss and say, oh, I'm working. See, I'm working. Watch me. See, I'm working really hard. I'm clicking these computer keyboards like crazy. No, you're saying, no, when I click these computer keyboards, my boss thinks I'm working, but I want to make sure I'm really getting maximum results because I know that there's going to be good results. Okay, fourth thing we need is to collaborate and benefit others. This is a work habit that when I do something, I want to help other people. And I think, no, I can advance myself. I don't need to advance other people. I can just work and get ahead myself. But not everybody can do everything. And as you work, no matter what kind of work you do, if you don't have the benefit of other people's results and what they have found, you have to learn everything yourself. You're going to be continually starting again, like they say, reinventing the wheel. If everybody keeps figuring out how to do the wheel again, well, nobody's going to ever get to make a car. All right? So we have to, this is an extremely important part of this, and we need to have an attitude of cooperation, a cooperative attitude. And I wanted to show several of these because this is something people don't believe. No, you don't need a cooperative attitude. Oh, yes, you do. And you see it in the scientists. Louis Pasteur, the famous biological researcher, developed so many things like pasteurized milk and rabies vaccine. He said, science knows no country because knowledge belongs to humanity and is the torch which illuminates the world. How would it be if Louis Pasteur had developed his science, like learning how to pasteurize? He used it for the wine industry in France. He told them how to pasteurize the wine so they would not lose their product. And he just kept it to himself. He got his money from that and didn't worry about anybody else. Well, we would have never got the benefit of it. Albert Einstein, again, he had the statement, try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. Douglas Engelbart, who made the first computer mouse, and by the way, never received any payment for it. He would have been a very bitter man, and maybe he was a little bit bitter, because everybody has a little bit of selfishness that we have to conquer. But I think he did have a bit of a satisfaction that he really helped make the world a better place. Because when he was a young man, recently starting out in his career as an engineer, he put that as his first goal. Focus my career on making the world a better place. And he did. And, so no one's perfect, and I'm not saying that Douglas Engelbart had no selfishness in him, and he felt bad about not receiving payment. He received payment as salary for his job, but then the company patented the mouse and sold it, I think, to IBM for a small amount of money and didn't give him anything. And here's a man, you think a man who made such a great improvement should have been rich and famous. He's kind of famous, but not rich. He didn't become very rich. And so people who think, well, we need to get our patent system settled and get more motivation, financial motivation for getting new inventions that will stimulate the inventions. No, if you don't really want to cooperate and help people, even that's not going to get ahead. And many times in real life, the person does not receive a good financial reward for his great inventions that's comparative to the quality of what he gave the world. And you'll find most of the people are like this. Some of them got a good reward, some of them didn't. But that was not what they were starting out to do at the beginning. So to have this cooperative attitude, we'll collaborate and benefit others. We need to have the belief that we should try to benefit everyone. We should do that. If you don't have that belief, you don't believe that really we should, you're not going to really work that way, and you're going to work selfishly, and you're going to eliminate some advances. Without even knowing it, you're going to miss opportunities that you didn't even know you missed because you did not work with others. And the specific example is when you make a discovery or find a better method. For example, if you're working with a computer program and you find a better way to do it. Do you want other people to know about it, or do you just want to keep it for yourself? If you want to keep it for yourself, well, that's going to slow down advance. Okay. Ideally, we should receive a good reward, recognition and financial reward for what we do. But if you're just waiting for that, you're probably not going to help as much as you could. And I wanted to give another little example, a story of the Wright brothers, showing that they were not perfect. They did not have a cooperative attitude as they should have. And it slowed down the development of the airplane. Wilbur had invented the way to steer the airplane, to tip the airplane by twisting the wings. Now they use ailerons, which are separate parts, but the concept was the same, and he developed that. And another man named Glenn Curtiss was also working on airplane development. in the early 1900s. And they had made patents on their, gotten patents for their airplane control design. And Glenn Curtiss was using something similar, and they were suing him. And they were fighting about this, and they wouldn't let Glenn Curtiss make his airplanes. And it slowed airplane progress down probably, I don't know, I think maybe 10 years. What happened was in the end that the U.S. government said, look, we're coming into World War I. They called it the Great War then. And they got Glenn Curtiss and Orville Wright together because Wilbur had died by then, and got them to agree, give them a settlement, and said, let Glenn Curtiss use your stuff. Let's go. We got to make airplanes we're going to win the war with. So there was really an excellent negative example of how cooperative attitude is really important for advance, and how it did slow down advance when people got too greedy and wanted too much financial reward. That's not what a lot of people like to hear. People think if you make a lot of money, then that's your motivation, you're going to advance. But a country or society where people have that as their motivation are going to be stopped in their progress, slowed down at least greatly. So to do this, we need to have these. So what kind of culture is it? Okay, I put this question up. When you have to have certain attitudes, what does culture have to do with it? Just some people think that's just an individual thing. I think I define culture as your attitudes, your beliefs, and your habits all together. And I want to show you that there are some cultures, some belief systems, some habit systems that really stop these attitudes from developing. Let's take a look at some. This is a book written in 50 BC, over 2,000 years ago. And he says, Lucretius Carus in his book said, primordials of things in motion too, by their own weights, unions try and motions too of every kind, meet quickly at last, and so often become the fit beginnings of mighty things, earth, sea, and sky, and races of living creatures. Nature is seen to do all things herself, and through herself, of own accord, rid of all gods. This was a belief taught that this is basically chance, atheistic evolution. There's no God. There's no one planning this. They're trying things. It's a little hard to follow this old English translation of this Latin book. But if you look here, it says they're trying. The primordial things, the basic things, the primitive things are trying different things just by chance. And nature just does things. There's no purpose. Nature just does whatever nature feels like doing. And then, here's the results. That's a chance origin. Okay. There's another belief system that was very common in Asia. It has also been argued that Taoist principles, which addressed nature more than the also influential Confucius principles, suggested that although there might be order in nature, this is the key here, there might be order. We see order in nature, but this order was not ordained by a rational personal being. There is, therefore, no reason that we should be able to spell out the laws of the universe. Okay? This is an indication that maybe when you have a philosophy like this, people don't look for scientific laws. They don't look for basis of technology. Because there's no reason. There's no rational basis for this. There was no rational creator that did this. And when you believe that everything is just happening by chance, there's no basis for it, there's no purpose. The processes are just happening in a random way, sort of falling into order by themselves, then what reason is there to believe that we have orderly principles structuring the universe that I can learn? It's going to fall. It isn't a foundation. I've illustrated it like a cloud. Any belief that you might have had is going to fade away, and you're going to say, I don't think we can really do this. There might not be really something I can learn. And the work habit of saying learn and prepare with enthusiasm falls through the clouds of pessimism and superstition. Take a look at another one. Matteo Ricci was an Italian who went to China in 1605 and lived with them for a long time. And he brought back some of the observations he had. He said, the Chinese know nothing more than to make computations without any insight into the rules. In other words, they don't understand the rules. At that time, the culture at that time in China was in this way. It says when the result does not come out right, all they say is that they kept to the rules of their forebears, their ancestors. He said, my ancestors told me to do this. I did what they said. End of story. Compare that with the Wright brothers' statement. If you think that anything that's accepted as right has to be right, you will not make progress. Looks like the Chinese aren't going to make progress at this time. Okay? And this is another observation by a student or a historian of science. And he said, to me, whatever the causes of the scientific revolution, its most important effect was to move people away from what was essentially ancestor worship. In other words, a sense that ancient scientists knew far more than we do. So he moved them away from that to a feeling that we could do better and learn more by ourselves. We could figure out things by ourselves. The culture that was common in China, in maybe the Shinto belief too of honoring ancestors, and I don't think we're all saying that we shouldn't honor our ancestor and respect our forebears, but if we think that I can't learn anything, I can't do anything, no one can make a mistake. They can't make a mistake, and if I follow their advice, I will not be making a mistake. We cannot correct. We cannot work carefully. We cannot do anything to advance. And so the idea that we should verify, the belief that we should verify all things by testing them in the real world is lost on when you try to support it with the cloud of the belief that old ways and authorities cannot be wrong. And the attitudes that result from that are pride and stagnation. We're good enough. You can't teach me anything. We're going to stay like we are forever and ever. This has been this way for thousands of years, and it's going to be the way for the next thousands of years. Do you want to work carefully? Why? Just do your work, do your duties, do whatever you are required to do, and then you go home and sit back and do nothing. And if somebody says, you're wrong, you said, what Matteo Ricci said that the Chinese said, they said when he would see them make something wrong, and they knew it was wrong, but they said, well, I kept the ways of my ancestors, and that's all that I'm required to do. So I have to be right, even if I'm wrong. Another quote from Lucretius Carlos, it says, nature seen, what we already saw before, that nature does everything alone. So his conclusion was, so man in vain futilities toils on forever and wastes in idle cares his years, because of very truth he hath not learned what is the true end, what the true end of getting is. So the result of his idea that nature does everything by chance led him to conclude that our life is useless. We don't know what our purpose is. What am I supposed to do? If I work all day, I might end up with a result that's completely useless. Why should I work? And the philosophy here, the Epicurean philosophy, let us eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. I'm going to go home and I'm going to have a party. I'm going to enjoy my food. I'm going to relax, go on vacation, travel around on my horse, I guess, or my wagon. And just enjoy my life. And if I'm enjoying myself, that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to say, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning because I want to see if I can improve this, because I don't even know if that's going to be good. And that belief that life has no direction or purpose will take this fundamental belief that is needed to improve our technology, that it will be worthwhile to understand and apply those principles. It falls away. And the resulting fatalism, whatever will be, will be. It's all determined. Nothing you can do about it. We're just going through like the machine of that Lucretius Carlos taught was the little balls moving around, bouncing around, and whatever comes out, comes out. I can't really change that, and so I'm just lazy. Just enjoy my life. Are you going to accomplish as much as you can? Of course not. Here's another one. Eat or be eaten. Or repeat this other philosophy of let us eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Well, that leads you to say, I want things for myself. Not only will I not work hard to try to develop something, but I'm not going to try to give it to someone else, because I'm just trying to enjoy my life. Let him worry about his life. And eat or be eaten, the principle of survival of the fittest, evolutionary development by developing some skill that causes you to be able to defeat another creature, eat them up, then you can pass on your genes and they die. What's that going to do to the belief that we should benefit everyone with these things? Focus on survival instinct is not going to hold that belief up. You're not going to maintain that if you have those beliefs. You're going to have the attitudes of selfishness, envy, and mistrust. All right. Now, I think that some of you probably will say, I know what you're talking about, because that's what you see. If you live in a society that's characterized by selfishness, envy, and mistrust, good luck, because you're going to need it, because there's not going to be a good work habit going around of collaborating and benefiting others.